Greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's forum. Please welcome the Student Planning Committee Chair for Sport and Society Week, Lucas Monroe.
Good evening, and welcome to day 3 of Sports and Society Week panels. Tonight's going to be another great panel. It's brought to you by Penn Athletics and the Office of Social Equity and Community. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has been following us and participating throughout the week, especially over the last 2 days. For those who haven't been able to get on to some of the meetings that we've had the last few days, you can find those on YouTube at our page, Social Equity and Community Penn. I don't have too much to say though. I'd love to get right into the panel. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Piper from men's lacrosse, and he's going to introduce tonight's panel and the great student panelists that we have.
Sorry, I got on mute. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last of our 3 panels. My name is Piper Bond, and I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm currently a junior in the College of Arts and Sciences, majoring in economics and minoring in environmental studies and history, and I also serve as a defensive midfielder on the men's lacrosse team. I'm excited to introduce today's panel, Varsity Life, Penn Student Voices, which will focus on what being a student athlete at Penn truly involves. We will aim to recognize the many skill sets needed to endure the work, play, life balance, as well as analyzing the often misunderstood and underappreciated dual identity of student athletes. Personally, I'm especially excited for this panel because there are not often opportunities for athletes to discuss the grind of being a student athlete, especially at a place like Penn. So for these guys to have the ability to be honest and talk through the nuances of what their day-to-day and overall life experiences are like, I think is pretty impactful and will hopefully be enlightening. So now I would like to introduce the panelists. First up is Mitch Bartolo, who is a senior economics major from Connecticut. He is also a teammate of mine and serves as one of the captains on the men's lacrosse team. Next, we have Sherwood Caballero, a senior political science major from New York, and he is a midfielder on the men's soccer team. We also have Michae Jones, a senior from Louisiana, who is majoring in health and societies, and she is a guard on the women's basketball team. And finally, Kayla Padilla is a sophomore from California who is concentrating in finance and entrepreneurship in Wharton, and she is a guard on the women's basketball team. She will also be serving as the moderator for this event. So Kayla, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Lucas, and thanks, Piper, for the great introduction. I'm so excited to be here among some of my fellow student athletes, including my own teammate, Michae. I think it's a really timely discussion as we as student athletes have had a lot of time to reflect our role as student athletes over the course of this pandemic, and of course, following the really exciting events of March Madness that just really showcase the excitement and unity that can come with college athletics. So without further ado, I'm really excited to kick this off. So just to begin with, lots of people recognize us and know us as athletes, but let's give our viewers some context as to who we are as students. So Mitch, if you could start us off by telling us what you're studying here at Penn and why you chose that specific major, and we can go around the virtual Zoom room.
Yeah, so I'm studying economics. I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to study when I first came in. Kind of decided just wanted to talk to some people and kind of get a feel for everything. But I figured out later on that I was really interested in kind of business and how economics work in general on the macro and micro level, and that just kind of fit my schedule and kind of fit my interest the best that any of the other majors. So it's going really great so far.
That's awesome. Michae, I'll pass it on to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Michae. I'm a health and societies major with a concentration in healthcare markets and finance. And as a pre-med student, I knew that I wanted to be an HSOC major because it would allow me to open my eyes to the clinical issues and that takes place in medicine and all the ins and outs of healthcare. And I just really want to learn about the ethics and the social determinants of health. And that's what the major is all about. And I think I've gained a lot of knowledge and expertise that I'll need to build those patient-doctor relationships once that time comes for me.
That's awesome. And Henry, you can finish it off.
Cool. Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having us. I think it's an awesome event that we're doing right now. Yeah, my name is Henry. I'm a senior, also in the College of Arts and Sciences. I was kind of all over the place, to be honest. I came in also undecided, just like Mitch. But just like exploring a variety of different classes, I came to end up majoring in political science. But I also ended up minoring in computer science and also Latin American and Latinx studies. Honestly, like at the beginning, I took a couple of cis classes and I was like, maybe I should transfer to engineering. And then I actually took the classes and I was like, nah, I'm staying in the college. So yeah, I just wanted to explore just like super variety of different things. And I think Penn does a good job of giving us a variety of things to study. And that's where I'm at.
Awesome. So let's backtrack a little bit and talk about some of the things you were involved in high school, non-sports related. I think a lot of people just think, we were preparing so much athletically to get recruited at the collegiate level that they don't understand that we also had to involve ourselves in a lot to be in a good, just overall standing in terms of being recruited. So, Henry, can you start us off by telling us what you were involved in high school and maybe now touch on what you're involved in here at Penn?
Cool. Yeah. I think in high school, honestly, soccer was a big part of high school, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that I was doing outside of school. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but I played the cello growing up, so it's a little bit embarrassing, but I was kind of like musically inclined, so that's something that I did on the side. Looked good on the application, I guess, and then yeah, so then I came to Penn. Soccer was also a big part of life here, but I really liked getting involved in the community, especially in the athletics department. So just like taking on a couple of work study jobs that I did, for example, like I did, and I'm still doing athletic operations. So like working at all your guys' games, I'm at the women's games a lot, like sweeping the floors, at the lacrosse games, shagging balls. But yeah, I also did like student athlete tutoring, a couple library jobs here and there, but yeah, no, I really like being involved in the Penn community, and it's been great, just like being at your guys' games, and just staying involved.
That's great, and that's awesome that you can still like somewhat involve yourself in other sports while getting some work into. So I'll pass it over to Michae to touch on the same question.
Sure. So in high school, like Henry, for me, basketball was literally, it took majority of my life in high school, but I was also really involved in student council. And for 3 years in my high school, I served as the class president. And most people don't know that, but that like involved planning events, meeting with administration about the concerns that we were having as a class. And I also did like a little bit of volunteering with like toy drives. I lived in a really small town, so there was a lot of underserved like communities that really needed some help. So I would volunteer on the side with them. And now that I'm in Penn, and since like COVID has taken away my senior year, senior season as on the basketball team, I decided to get more involved in the West Philadelphia community. So I serve as a lead mentor for Beat the Streets and Believe in Better, which are two nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to mentoring high school student athletes in very underinvested communities in West Philadelphia. And so that's really what's been taking up majority of my time. And also like with Rich and Mitch and Raven, I've really been involved with like social justice programs on campus and really helping out with that and just serving on a few panels and talking on a few podcasts. And so that's what I've really been involved in since high school.
Thanks, Michae. And Mitch, you can finish it off.
Yeah, so again, like you guys, a lot of sports, a lot of lacrosse in high school, basketball and football also towards the end of my high school career took up a lot of my time. I actually went to two different high schools. So at my first high school, I was involved in a program called Best Buddies, which was kind of a way to incorporate autistic students into the entire into the social scene at the high school and kind of bring them along and create those relationships. So that was early on. I wish I had done more volunteer stuff at my other high school. I was more focused on recruiting at that point. But since I've been at Penn, I've been lucky enough to participate a lot in the Young Quakers program. I'm a big Quaker captain for that, which I'm very excited about. And so we are able to kind of go into these underprivileged areas in inner city Philadelphia and teach kids lacrosse and give them kind of a role model to get out of that and to look up to see what they can achieve and not just what their surroundings are providing for them. And then some other ABCS courses where I've been able to go into the same schools and have those conversations and build those relationships. And so I've been really lucky. Penn has really opened my eyes to that volunteer work and kind of community giving back appropriately. So.
No, that's great. And I think you guys are a really just great example of, still making time for the things that are important to you, whether they be volunteer work or just being involved in things that you're passionate about, while still maintaining the rigor that comes with being a student athlete. So that's so awesome to hear. But for our viewers who didn't catch it, my fellow three panelists here are all graduating seniors. So with that, Michae, would you mind sharing at first what your postgraduate plans are?
Sure. So I just accepted a job at the Hospital University of Pennsylvania as a research coordinator in cardiology. It'll be my first time getting some research done in cardiology. And for I was at CHOP for a while doing research for urology. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. So I'll be at HUP for about 2 years. And then after the 2 years, I'm hoping to go to medical school. So that's my plan. I don't have a plan B. So this is my only plan A. So I'm hoping that this all works out for me.
No, that's so awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
I'll pass it over to Henry.
Yeah, congrats, Michae. That's awesome. But yeah, no plan B. You gotta stay on that track.
Exactly.
Yeah, unlike Michae, I'm not really too sure where I'm gonna be at the next couple of months. I'm just right now grinding out applications, doing interviews, things of that nature. Hopefully looking to find something within the tech field, tech industry. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It's kind of up in the air right now.
Gotcha. And Mitch?
So I've actually accepted a job in finance, working in New York, but I was able to defer that for a year. So I'm not going to be working there until July of 2022. So right now I'm looking at graduate programs. I really want to be able to go back and play lacrosse. I don't want my career to have finished that way. So I'm looking at some programs here, some programs at other schools, but I'm looking to get my graduate degree, whether it be in finance or business or law or something along those lines. So I'm still kind of up in the air as well.
That's awesome. I mean, congrats to all of you guys. I know not a lot of you have concrete plans, but I mean, to me, just finishing college is the ultimate goal. So you guys are almost there. So congrats just on that. But kind of switching gears to kind of more of the daily routines that we have as student athletes. We have a pretty diverse group here with us being from different sports. So if you could each touch upon, just what your daily life is like on maybe a season basis when we're having games and stuff. So whoever wants to start with that, just to kind of give a brief day-to-day synopsis of, a typical student athlete day for you.
I can start. So obviously this isn't a normal season, but normal season times or where we're having games and things. I wake up around 8:30, 9 o'clock, get some breakfast, join my classes, do my work, finish, maybe get up early, do some work that I had from the night before. Probably head down to the field around 12 o'clock, get some lunch from food truck, go hang out in the locker room for a little bit, and then head to the training room around 1 o'clock to prepare for practice at 2. Have 2-hour practice, and then from there maybe we'll either have film or lift or speed work or something along those lines. Usually I'm down at the field from 2 to 6, we have that kind of blocked off. Then afterwards, go back to the training room, kind of touch up whatever was hurting, get a shower in, maybe have some night classes, maybe not, and then go home, relax, get some food, and then finish off some homework from 7 to 9, 7 to 10, and hopefully get some time in to hang out with friends and still engage in that social life and be able to decompress a little bit at the end of the day. But that's a pretty standard day in season for me, at least without dealing with COVID and all that. So
pretty packed. Anyone else can go next?
Sure. For the women's basketball team, in season, we may have a lift in the morning, but mainly our practice time and our lifts and our workouts are probably from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the afternoon. So during the day we're all in class, maybe office hours and things like that, and then we hit the practice at about 3, and we might have a lift right after. And some people do extra conditioning, so it's very individualized as well. So it's whatever you put into it. And we also have to find time to eat. That was something that I struggled with as a student athlete, just finding time during the day to eat before practice. So that's another obstacle that athletes have to deal with. And yeah, and then like Mitch said, once you get home, at 7 p.m., then you have to do homework and you have to study and try to find time to socialize with other people to stay sane. So our day is really from morning to night, honestly.
True. Yeah. And I'm sure Henry, pretty much the same for you, or how much does it differ?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to both of you, to be honest. I mean, same time slot, 2 to 6 as Mitch with the lacrosse team. But yeah, it's very similar. Just like like, and in terms of eating, that's the same thing with me. Like I spent a lot of time in Hill, and like people would criticize me for using swipes, but that all you can eat from Hill, like sometimes you take an extra cup of fruit or like yogurt or something, and you use that to fuel you for the rest of the day. But yeah, it's just about like making sure you can fit in all the different things in terms of like getting to class and just like doing everything that your professor's asking of you, but also trying to find time like towards the end of the day or during the weekends to just like chill with the homies and hang out with your friends. So it's definitely a balance between school and working hard every day on the field, but also just like finding that social life as well.
Right. Yeah. And I think one common denominator between all of you is making sure you had a good balance just between, prioritizing academics and athletics, but also, making time to distress by socializing. So I think that's really important thing to hit on. So with you guys having about 4 years under your belt, just being a Penn student and a Penn student athlete, what have you learned from sports that benefits you in other areas of life, whether that be, within Penn as a whole or in your greater community? Michae, I know you said getting involved with Beat the Streets. Maybe you can speak a little bit on that, and just more broader what you've learned from sports.
Yeah. Basketball has really given me like the confidence, the voice, the leadership skills that like I would need in any workplace. And it has really taught me how to stand out and like make people want to be around me, make people want to be led by me, which, allows people to trust me as well. So that's like a few of the skills and attributes that I've learned from basketball. And I try to take that into every single leadership position that I held. Especially with Beat the Streets. I'm an older mentor. I really want to mentor these younger kids and really mold them into successful adults. And so, basketball has really like harped on working collectively with other people and getting the job done and confidently using your voice and your like your stance and things like that. So so many benefits from basketball like throughout my 4 years since I've been playing since I was 6. There's so many things that I've learned from it. It's hard to choose just a few.
No, totally agree. Mitch, did you want to go?
Yeah. I mean, she hit on everything. I mean, from the leadership perspective, I mean, us being seniors now, I've been able to see kind of 3 years of leaders ahead of me along with my coaching staff, which has kind of taught me a lot just from being around them. But I would say obviously working with other people, working with a team has been huge. I mean, that like being able to kind of get along with people and understand what your similarities and differences are, but putting those things aside and going out on the field and going out to get better and achieve a common goal. That's been a huge thing. And then also time management has been massive, just in terms of having to prepare and understanding that like when we're 2 to 6, like we're not really 2 to 6, we're really like a 1 to 7 if you want to prepare everything that you're doing. And then also just putting in like hard work for things that may not pay out right away. I think that our coaching staff especially has done a great job of harping on that, of being able to put in the work kind of in the shadows and not always understanding that not always not all the work that you do is going to be shown all the time, but it is necessary to progressively be getting better all the time. And I think that can apply to every walk of life. And I'm really thankful to have been able to go through that and experience that.
That's awesome. And Henry?
Yeah, I think I'll probably say 2 things. I think out of like many that I've learned from just playing soccer growing up. I think one thing is like kind of as Mitch was saying and Michae as well, but just like finding a voice. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I took from Penn soccer, just like evolving from someone who's like very afraid of like Penn, coming from like a very little like public school, to someone who's like, like comfortable with speaking with people and like, like now doing a panel. So I think it's like, yeah, just like finding a voice within yourself, and getting to know yourself in that way. I think the second thing I would say is just loving like what you do and loving the grind of working hard, and especially when you have like a family around you, a team of brothers or sisters who are around you and are willing to put in that work every day for a common goal, no matter what role you're is on the team. I think it's very beautiful. And especially like the past couple months where I wasn't able, like as a senior and not coming back to play soccer again, but just like missing a couple of months of just like training. I'm like, yeah, like in those moments, it's very hard to like train every day and try to get better, but like, and you miss it. So those underclassmen definitely enjoy it. Enjoy the grind, enjoy doing something that you love every single day. Because, time flies at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. No. Again, for any underclassmen here, I think Henry just left with some really good advice, especially with everyone's season kind of just being in shambles this past year. So really appreciate the small moment. So I'm glad you said that, Henry. But kind of speaking on the past year, and I guess with the rise of social injustice issues, which I think all three of you have already spoken on panels to touch about. Can you speak to, I guess, the greater Penn community and how you've seen Penn student athletes make a positive community impact? You can speak on your own experience or what you've seen, among your fellow student athletes, but anyone's free to take this question.
The first name that came to mind after you read that, Kayla, was Raven. And I don't know how to pronounce her last name and I don't want to mess it up, but Raven's a senior on the volleyball team. And she has literally spearheaded every single social justice movement, initiative, program on campus. She is one of the greatest leaders on this campus, and her face, her name, her voice is on everything, especially dealing with social justice, but also things like this for student athletes. So I know she was a big part of getting this kicked off too. So she's one of the reasons that I'm so active in it. She asked me to be on the very first panel at the beginning of summer. And so she gave me that confidence to use my voice and lead my women's basketball team and others around me. So Raven has been a huge positive like community impact since all this social justice things, happened in like last March and last April.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I would just echo that. I mean, I'm in the same spot as Michae. We did the same first panels, and Raven recruited both of us, and I was very thankful for it to kind of be able to kind of amplify others' voices by using my platform and using my voice to do that. And I think that's been awesome. I mean, it sparked a lot of conversations that may seem difficult, but are definitely very necessary within our team, within other teams, and within athletics in general. And I think that Raven's efforts overall have really kind of jump-started Penn athletics and the administrators to realize, hey, this is an issue that we need to talk about, that we need to deal with, and we're gonna she kind of gave them that little push to initiate that, and that was really necessary. I think at a time when so many people were so distressed and it almost felt like we were silent on issues. I think that's really important that was touched on. I'm really thankful that Raven brought me along for the journey, and I was able to contribute however I could.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you guys, and I think just beyond Raven's been awesome, and I think just in addition to that, you two and Kayla as well. I remember seeing you two in the first couple panels, and for me that was it was dope because I reflected a lot during the time when there was a lot of protests going on, and I was out there as well, in Philly and New York City, just out in the streets and trying to find a voice in those areas. But I think the great thing that we found that we've done over the past couple months in the athletic department was how to take that passion and make it into something where you're taking people along with you, and it's not just you're not just outside and protesting, and that's an awesome thing, but how can you affect the community that's around you? And I think that's what we did. That's what we've been doing so well. That's what Raven's done so well, is taking something that's close to us in the athletic department that we all always are know that we have a common goal, and then coming up with a new common goal and trying to do things and fighting for those things. I just respect so much people who believe strongly in something and then will fight for it and speak out about it. I think that's the best part of what's coming out of these panels and what's coming out of these discussions. It's yeah, we can talk about having the conversations, but will we actually have them? And that's exactly what's been on my mind, and that's exactly what we want to keep on doing.
Right. No, I think what all of you guys said was great. And like many of you said, it all starts with student athletes like Raven who make that initial push, and it creates ripples. I mean, who knows if we would have been having this panel if it wasn't for that initial start. So I think that's just really a testament to, the impact that student athletes can have, beyond the court, beyond the playing field. So I'm glad you guys made note of that. Kind of switching gears to kind of talking about your role and identity as a student athlete. A lot of people just kind of see us for who we are, while we're playing our sport. They might only see the stats that we put up or how many points we scored, how many goals we scored. So Henry, if you could maybe start off by touching on what you believe the biggest misconception that other students have about varsity athletes, and how that kind of translates to how it makes you feel and the kind of stereotypes that come around student athletes here in general or just here at Penn.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a process that I went through as well. Is just like trying to figure out what my own identity was as a student athlete and just like as a person at Penn. I think for me, it's like the process has been sort of discovering what like who I am as an individual and the things that I believe in. In terms of the biggest misconception that people have, I mean, I don't want to paint. I think the thing is that like we try to, like people paint us as being something different and like being our own little bubble, which at times we can be, and it's awesome that we have sort of an athletic community. But I think just the idea that like we're not like deserving to be here just because like we might have gotten recruited or things of that nature, or just like talking about intelligence levels, things like that. Like, man, like honestly, I walked onto the soccer team and I wasn't recruited, and I've met people who were recruited who are way smarter than I am. So it's a lot of, it's, like everybody puts in a lot of work, and every student athlete here deserves to be here. And I think it's awesome that, like we have a community and we can respect sort of the grind of the everyday.
Right. Mitch or Michae, feel free to join in.
Sure. A lot of my Black male friends, they've told me stories about professors like automatically assuming that they were playing a sport. And I think that's like the biggest misconception that the Black student athletes have like got into Penn because they play basketball, because they play football, and especially at Ivy League schools, it seems, I don't want to generalize anything, but it seems that, professors and students think that those students, got here because of sports, when we literally have to send in our ACT scores and our SAT scores. Like we still have to send in the transcripts. So without us doing well in the classroom, we wouldn't even be here. So we're capable of it all. We just bounce a basketball on the side as well. So I think that's a huge misconception that I've dealt with personally. And especially my male Black friends who weren't even involved in sports, but were already being like put into that category automatically.
Right.
Yeah, I think that in terms of lacrosse, I think it's a little bit different. Lacrosse is generally viewed as a very privileged sport that you need wealth essentially to play growing up. And I think that a lot of people might think like similar to what Henry and Michae were talking about, like, hey, like, you're in here because of your athletic ability or because your family has money or things along those lines. And I just think that generalizations in general are very, very dangerous all across. And I mean, while that might apply like to certain people within the lacrosse team or other sports teams across campus, I just think that it has to go on an individual basis, and you need to have those conversations with people and learn like who they really are, what they stand for, why they are here, and what their goals are from here. And I mean, once people do get here, they learn a lot about themselves, as Henry was talking about earlier. They learn a lot about themselves from freshman to senior year. And I just think that, I mean, I've made a lot of really good friends that are not on any sports teams. I made a lot of good friends on sports teams that I've never like thought, like fencing, squash, like things that I just wouldn't have thought. And so I think that those generalizations could take away from those opportunities. And I think that that's something that everybody needs to get away from.
I totally agree. And just kind of continuing on the same subject, I know Michae, you kind of talked about and Mitch, just sort of generalizations that continue to happen, especially for student athletes and especially student athletes of color. And yesterday's panel, which was really great, focused on representation and identity in sports. So Michae, if you could maybe start us off by talking about how your identity, whether that be racial or socioeconomic, however you define it, impacts your experience as a student athlete?
Yeah, being a Black woman in sports has definitely come with its challenges, like we were just talking about in our previous question, just in the classroom and in our like social groups as well. But being a student athlete and being a Black woman is something like I'll never regret, because being as a Black student athlete, I've been able to establish like great networks with Black alumni who are also part of sports, both male and female. So I've been able to get great jobs that were looking for people from diverse backgrounds and who could also work well on the team. So like I'm a Black woman and I'm also on the women's basketball team. So those two really meshed well. And I've had a great experience being, a Black woman and being a student athlete at the same time. And it's amazing to watch, women who look like me, excel on the collegiate level and nationally. And so it really makes me proud to be a Black woman. I think I've had a great experience as a student athlete. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but this is something like I'll always appreciate. And I really had a great experience, and I wish it would never end, but at some point my knees would give out. So, especially playing basketball, but yeah, my identity and my experience has been one that's been, very, very successful, and it's very beneficial, and it's been a good experience.
That's awesome. Henry, Mitch, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, also being a person of color, so I come from a Mexican background. It was, I would say, like, I also had a very positive experience, but I would also say that like it was definitely a process, and I think we can't ignore like how hard it can be at times to be a person of color at Penn, and also just be a person of color like playing sports. Like for me, growing up, I went through like the whole public school system in New York City. And so like my high school was this like very troubled high school where like every morning I'd have to go in through like metal detectors, and then like wear uniforms, and like there's a bunch of like officers and like patrolling the hallways. Like if you weren't in the right classroom at the right time, like you can get in trouble. But that was just because like, like it was a high school that had like violence a lot in the past. And that's what we had to transition to. But for me, the best thing that I took out of like that high school experience was being on that soccer team, and like, like half the kids on my team like barely spoke English. And it's like, I could, like every single one was either like Latino or from West Africa or from the Caribbean. And I just really love like that diversity of being with people who are also immigrants in the same way that you are. And I think for me, like, when I came to Penn, like it was honestly like a culture shock. Like I came to Penn and I was like, I just came from a team where like everybody was Black, or like everyone was Latinx, and like everyone spoke the same language as me, or like barely spoke English, or like they were speaking their own little languages here and there. And I think for me, when sort of the reflections that I have from that is like, not every place is going to be the same way, and there's going to be places that you're very uncomfortable in. But it's also a place, like Penn, the best thing that I take out of being on the Penn men's soccer team is like making sure that I'm comfortable with my own identity and not being afraid to like show it in the locker room. And I think that's the best thing that I got from my teammates was like, I'd go into the locker room and like everyone would respect me for the person I was. And even though at times I was like afraid to express myself in those ways and afraid to like express who I was as like pretty much the only like Latinx person in the locker room for a lot of my time at Penn. It's about like finding yourself, but also making sure that that like there's 25 other guys who are like going through shit the same way. Going through stuff the same way.
You're good.
As you are. And like, I think the best thing that you can get is like a family who's like working towards the same goal as you, and you all have one thing in common is a love for a sport. And I think that's the best thing. That's the best thing in sports is like, whether you're in a place where like nobody speaks English, or like, there's like much less diversity. Like if you have a common language in the sport that you play, you can like achieve anything, and you can do anything. So I think that's my favorite part of being a person of color, and also being a person of color athlete at Penn.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I'm obviously I'm a white I'm white. I'm not a person of color, so I haven't dealt with those struggles. I was lucky enough to go to a pretty diverse high school and grow up in a pretty diverse city. And so a lot of my friends are of different ethnicities, different races, and so I was kind of accustomed to that. And then coming here, I mean, there's obviously less diversity in some aspects and more in others. And I'm just really grateful that I've been able to have those conversations with people I'm really close with that have gone through things like Michae and Henry have gone through. And I just like feel it's my place to kind of amplify their voices and to understand that I won't understand what they actually go through, but also try to be most inclusive that I can, and try to spread that message to everybody else who's also on my team or comes from a different background. Just understand that not everybody comes from the same backgrounds, and they weren't as fortunate as I was to come from such a diverse background. And so just kind of opening their eyes to just opening their eyes to what else is out there and what other people are going through and what other people are experiencing. I think that empathy has been a huge tool in this past year. It's been a huge thing for me, trying to have very difficult conversations, whether it be with my family, with my teammates, with anybody. And I think that it's important for everybody to recognize those things, even though we're not all going through them and experiencing the same things that Michae and Henry and other athletes are going through. I think that it's important that we all are on the same page about it and we understand, so that we can move forward to a better future. So.
Right. And I liked how you kind of ended off with kind of the keyword of empathy. I think we have such a great group here just because we can kind of touch on both sides of the story here in regards to not being a person of color, being a person of color, but still kind of finding some common ground and understanding each other. But kind of like touching more on the whole movement of this past summer, of which a lot of you are involved in, as I heard, as leaders on your team, just athletically within your sport, how has that role kind of changed? Obviously with the pandemic and a lot of us not being able to be on our actual, playing court or playing field, but then adding that layer of, with all these recent social injustice issues, how have you kind of viewed your role as a leader and maybe how that evolved, especially during this time? Anyone can feel free to take a stab at that one and jump right in.
For me, I can just start off. For me, I've kind of seen it. I've kind of seen it as my responsibility as a leader on my team to do the things that are going to, like, as my coach has always said, like, what is going to make our team like the best men come out of this program. And so one of the aspects of that is being non-racist and actively anti-racist. And I think that one of the things that we've like kind of talked about this year is like, obviously, like, nobody on our team is really racist, but we need to really have those uncomfortable conversations and make sure that anybody who comes in there understands that like where we're trying to move with this whole program. And I've had a lot of really good conversations with my coaches and with other guys on my team, and just trying to kind of open up those conversations to make them organic and make them come from the leaders on our team, and maybe not make them be forceful conversations that are kind of like that like a video that someone just has to watch or someone just has to kind of like blindly follow along with, like something that we can actually, like, again, like we said, kind of reach that empathetic kind of gene within people and bring that out. And so that's been the huge thing for me. I mean, it's been difficult because we haven't been in person very much, and a lot of Zoom calls can get very tiring. And so it's a lot easier when you're in person. And so I've talked a lot with my coach about that moving forward. And I'm very happy that he's on board with it, and that our whole program is, that every program needs leaders like that to step up and do that. And I don't think that it should be the black student and athletes on every team that have to do that. I don't feel like we have one black student athlete on our team, and I don't think that he needs to be the one beating his chest about social injustice and about racial awareness. I think that it's our responsibility to step up for him. I think it's our responsibility to really show people like that we want to make this change, not because we have to, but because we know that's the right thing to do, and because we understand that people are being oppressed in a way that is not fair, and that we may never experience, but we definitely recognize is there. So that's kind of been my approach, and I'm very glad that my coach and the rest of my program has been behind us in that. So.
Yeah, and to piggyback off Mitch, I know I was a leader on my team as well with the social justice initiative, and I really wanted to make sure that the conversation wouldn't just stay in like those summer months. Like, I really wanted people to continue talking about this, especially within my team, because we're a diverse team of many races and ethnicities. So I really wanted to keep that conversation going, and I wanted to like I wanted my team to actively go into the West Philadelphia area and interact with the schools. And that's what we've been doing with Believe in Better. So that's something that I'm really proud of my team for, participating in so actively, and very excited about it. So that was a key theme for me in leading my team. I just wanted people to not just, like say things, but actually be about what they're saying, and literally like placing themselves into West Philly. Cause I don't think that we've done that a lot I don't think we've done that a lot, and getting off campus and really interacting with the people that surround our campus. So that's been a common goal for me on my team.
Yeah, I think speaking from my perspective and the soccer perspective, I think for us, and I think for me personally, it was definitely an evolution where, like, like starting in the summer, it was very heated, and like it was kind of hard to actually have a conversation about things without either feeling like you're lecturing someone or like you're being lectured. And I think that honestly like happened within our team, that like I was very passionate about things, and I'd speak out about things, but it wasn't really a conversation. And I think, like, similar to Micah, Michae, we had to get to a place where like we actually had things that we were talking about, and we were actually about the things that we were saying. And so eventually, and we started this semester, me and a couple of kids on the team, which started with a white kid on my team, which Will Schlatter, which was for me was the best part of it, was that like, like I was at a point where I was like, I don't know how to like get through to having these like conversations, and not just saying that we're going to have a conversation, but like actually having them. And for like a white kid on my team to come up to me and be like, we should do something about this, and we should talk about the things that are happening right now, was like the best part for me. So we like came up with a group of 5 kids on our team. And like for the past couple months, we've just been like choosing a topic that really matters to us, that's very important to us, in terms of like racial injustice and just racism in general. And then we've just like gotten together as a team and talked about it. And I think the best part that comes out of that is like, being a person of color in a locker room, sometimes you're not the most comfortable with like talking about your experiences. And I think what I want to get out of and what we all want to get out of talking with each other is like, how can we be comfortable talking with people who are like essentially your family, like your brothers? How can you be comfortable with being who you are, and like speaking out against things that are making you uncomfortable, whether it's like within the locker room or in the greater area, and making sure that like you actually get closer as a group, rather than being fractioned by, like being lectured or lecturing someone. I think for us, it's like at this point, it's about like introspection and thinking about like who we are as a team. And I think going forward, like I would love to do something similar to what Michae is doing with the basketball community now. And I wonder how the athletic department or just Penn in general can grow in that sense. Is like, how can we go into the community that is around us and like talk to kids and like talk to underprivileged communities and marginalized communities? How can we help out as very privileged people being at a very elite institution, and go out into these communities and like do something good and like actually make a difference? So I think it's a process, and different teams and different people are at different stages, but I think there's definitely room to grow, and I will be pushing myself to like get my team to get into things like that. But it's about all of us, and all of us sort of getting that common goal and making a change for the better.
Right. Yeah. And I love how you said, talking about kind of the process of all of this. I think just from the examples that all of you gave, just by our conversation here alone, and the conversations that occurred, during the summer within the student athlete community, just how much improvement that we're making, but yet still a lot of growth that there is, that, programs like the women's basketball team is involved in with Beat the Streets, that can be widely spread among other programs too. So again, a lot of room to grow. But just kind of shifting gears as we're approaching, the latter half of our conversation here, kind of going back to the student athlete identity, and maybe what our viewers and, fellow Penn members of the community can learn. Mitch, if you can maybe start off by just talking about what you think other Penn students can learn from, their varsity athlete classmates, whether that just be, just kind of breaking some barriers as to who we are, or, what they can learn from, our experiences, whatever you want to touch on.
Yeah. I would say the number one thing is inclusivity. I think that goes a pretty far away. I think that a lot of times people find one or two friends, especially if they're not in the sport, like, or if they don't do a fraternity or sorority. They might just find one or two friends who are very similar to them, and maybe not experience anyone that's different from them or that has come up from a different background than them. And so I think that's like a really important thing that I've learned from sports, that maybe someone who's not an athlete wouldn't maybe understand as much because they haven't had those experiences. I mean, all the things that we touched on earlier about leadership and time management and all those things as well. But I just think that I think that student athletes and regular students, or people who are simply students at Penn, are a lot more similar than a lot of people think, and are a lot more similar than those students might think. And so I think that, like, maybe just having those conversations, and even though, like, a lot of times, like, teams seem like they're a brotherhood, or only like are with themselves, or are very like exclusive, almost, I think that having a conversation with one or two lacrosse guys, with one or two basketball guys or girls, with one or two soccer players or squash or tennis or whatever, I think that could really broaden your horizons. And I think that, yeah, I would say inclusivity, and kind of accepting someone who isn't necessarily from the same background as you. I think that's important.
Yeah, Michae or Henry, feel free to add your thoughts as well.
Yeah, and to go off of Mitch's theme of inclusivity, I know going back a little bit to the misconception that student athletes don't like do their work, or like they get lazy on their work. I think that's like something that Penn students think, that we're not as like dedicated to our schoolwork like we are to our athletics. So I know, like, in a few classes, it seems like athletes like group together and they study together, and it seems like normal Penn, like regular Penn students, tend to just study in their pods, and they don't really include student athletes because they think we're not going to do all the work or do our part of the job. So I think really including us, we're going to work just as hard as you will. We want to get the same grades as you do, and we definitely like have timing issues because practice and lifts and just things like that. And I just hope, like, Penn students and Penn professors as well, like, they really understand what it means to be a student athlete and what that entails, and maybe being a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more helpful, and really including us in like group sessions and like office hours and things like that, and just really accommodating us, because our schedules are really different from like Penn students. So I think is a huge point that Penn students should really learn from their student athletes.
Yeah, I think that the only thing I'd add to that is, like, I think the only way that we can sort of like bridge that gap between like student athletes and others at Penn is just like talking with each other and meeting new people. And I think that's sort of the best way to like talk about misconceptions. Like, we can sit here and talk about them, or like we can actually get to know people. And I think for me, like, yeah, like a lot of my closest friends are non-student athletes, and a lot of my closest friends, friends are student athletes. I think the best thing that we can do, and it's something that goes both ways, is like, others realizing the sort of grind and the sacrifices that we make, but it's also like us doing the same for others, where like maybe it's not the same sort of physical strain on people's bodies, but like there's other people who are also like making a ton of sacrifices and putting in work in different ways. So I think it's a two-way street. And I think the best way to sort of bridge that gap is to get to know people around Penn.
Right, I totally agree. And I know, as much as our probably fellow teammates are tuned in to support us and watch us, I really do hope that, non-student athletes here at Penn are tuning in for this conversation as well, because I think what all three of you hit on are super important, to just kind of like sort of educate on what our lives are like, and some of what we're feeling. But speaking more to us being student athletes, and obviously some of the difficulties that come with some of the misconceptions that we get or the generalizations. Maybe Michae, you can start us off by talking about what you think the most challenging part of being a student athlete is, but on the other side, what is the most rewarding part as well?
I think the most challenging part for me personally was, and still to this day, just juggling like academics as well as athletics. That was really hard for me. I did it in high school and it was super easy, but once you get to college, it's a different pace. Your classes are more competitive, and then you have to be competitive on the court as well or in the field. And so that can really take a toll on you mentally and physically. So really learning how to balance the academic and the athletic side was a super hard thing for me to do. I definitely gotten better over the years naturally, but at first those freshman and sophomore years, they were really hard for me. And but the rewarding side is I've built like lifelong relationships with so many women that older and younger than me. I've been to different countries like Spain and France because of basketball, because of being a student athlete. I've gotten jobs where people love that I was a student athlete, and I was part of the reason that they wanted me in their company. And so the pros definitely outweigh the cons, and I've had so many beneficial like traits just from basketball, just from being a student athlete. So whenever I can mention that I'm a student athlete, I do. Like that was the first thing I put on my LinkedIn page. So it's definitely something that I'm proud of, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had. So I'm super grateful for just being a student athlete in general, especially at Penn as well.
Right. No, that LinkedIn is important.
Yeah.
For sure. Henry or Mitch, can go ahead.
Yeah, you got it, Henry.
All right, cool. Yeah, I would say like the biggest challenge for me is just like energy, to be honest. Like it's tiring to like play for 2 hours every day. Like I'd be in the library half the time at 10 p.m. like dozing off and trying not to fall asleep. But I think, yeah, just like how Michae said, it's like finding that balance, and that's something that you learn on your own, just like over time and doing it. And I think like not just athletes, everyone has to sort of like time manage, and like we have to do it in a different way because like there's a physical toll that we take on our bodies, and there's also a mental one of like being on all the time in terms of like you're on all the time in class and like trying to participate in like reading or whatever. But like when you get onto the field and compete, like all your mental energy is just like on trying to win the specific sort of like drill that you're playing, or like how to get better at the drill that you're doing, or a specific skill that you're doing. And it's about sort of like having also time to reflect on what it is you're doing. And I think that's important to like take a step back and like make sure you know yourself and how to find that place where you can like, like sit down and do work and sort of get that mental space. And I think like that's a blessing, and that's also a curse in different ways. And I think that's probably one of the best things that comes out of being a student athlete is like you learn how to, like, even if your muscles are hurting and even if things aren't necessarily like going your way on the field, to get that out. Like I remember in high school, man, like I was on 2-3 different teams, and I'd go to like 2 different practices, and I'd like get home and do my homework. But now it's like, like as we get older and as like things are harder to do, you figure out different ways to get to know your body, to get to know your mental space. And that makes you, that definitely has made me a more effective person in the long run.
Yeah, just going off that, I mean, you guys basically touched on everything I wanted to say as well. But based on what Henry said about like having to be present all the time and having to spend all of your mental energy in one place, and being constantly like on your toes and being able to like recognizing how much you need to get done. I mean, I think that especially like at a Division I school and Ivy League school like Penn, I mean, academics are so rigorous and can be so difficult. That you really need to be present for those things, or else you'll fall really behind. And if your time management and everything isn't right on point, then you can definitely fall behind quickly. As well as, I mean, we have amazing athletic teams here, and so like we're like some of the best athletic teams in the country, and you really have to be present for every rep, present for every drill and practice, and for every second that you're there, especially as a leader. And I think it can be draining a lot of times. I think that's probably the hardest part for me was, I mean, early on it was time management freshman year because you're kind of getting into a whole new rhythm. But as that goes on, kind of keeping yourself engaged constantly and mentally present is really, really important. That's probably been the biggest struggle for me. But at the same time, I'm really grateful for that. I mean, I'm grateful that I've been able to go through that, and I'm grateful that I have gone through it, and I've been able to still achieve what I've achieved by myself and with my team so far. And the best reward of it all is working really hard with a group of guys who have a collective goal. And whether or not you reach that final goal of a national championship or Ivy League championship, whatever it is, that your real goal that you put in all the work for is grinding and the progress that you've made from where you started. And I think that's been probably the best reward. And obviously the relationships that we've built along the way, from those struggles, from those difficult days, from those difficult nights. And I'm just really thankful for all of them. I'm thankful for the struggles and for all the rewards. And like Michae said, it's helped me get new connections, new jobs, everything. And it's a great conversation starter for anything. So I'm really thankful all around for Penn Athletics and my experience here, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think you three hit on some really great things, and especially the kind of duality of, the beauty and the struggle that, even the struggles are sometimes the things that can come out the best from your student athlete experience. So I'm really grateful you guys hit on that. But time has gone so fast. We've been talking about some really important things, and we've hit on, such really riveting topics. But, as we approach our last question, and with all of you being graduating seniors, maybe Henry, you can start by saying what your favorite Penn sports memory has been, but also what your favorite Penn memory outside of sports has been as well.
I would say probably my favorite Penn athletics memory for me was, I think, when we played Yale. So they were 24th in the country at that time. And it was a tough game, 0-0 the whole game. Goes to overtime. Man, a ball gets played into our striker, Jake, into the box, turns, maybe dived a little bit. I don't know if there was contact. I think there was, but he dives. We get a penalty. Brandon Bartell steps up to the plate and buries the penalty, and we win in overtime. Everybody just rushes the field sprinting, and those are some of my favorite photos. It's us all jumping on Bartell and hugging each other, and the passion. It was the first time I think we beat a ranked team in my time at Penn. So that was awesome. In terms of favorite Penn memory outside of sports, I would probably say, man, this is nerdy, but all right. So there's this class I took called Net 212, and I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's a computer science class. And it was the hardest class I ever took at Penn, for real. I don't know how I got through it. And this was last semester when still online classes, and I was thinking all right, the professors are gonna go easy on us this semester because we're still in a pandemic, but they were coming at us hard. So we our final project was to make a mini Facebook, and I struggled with it crazy. I don't know how we sort of got through it, but in my group of 4, we, after 10 straight days of just working on it day and night, the best feeling was at the end, the last day, I think 3 hours before we were supposed to present to the professor, it actually worked. And we went to the presentation and we killed it. So I think that was the best part of it, was just how hard it was to do, but at the end of it, how rewarding it was to just do well in it and pull through, even if it came down to the wire for real.
Sure. Michae or Mitch?
For me, I think my team's gonna know. So anytime we played Harvard, I think those were my best memories. Even when we came up short in a few games, I think those games were so memorable for me, and I just love to go back and watch the highlights from them. And also when the men's team beat Villanova and we stormed the court, I think that was one of the highlights of my life, even though that wasn't my team. I just had a lot of fun just watching the men's play a nationally ranked team and beating them. So, and outside of Penn, I'm going to sound bad compared to Henry. I was just going to say that my favorite memories were spring fling events and going to formals with my teammates and stuff like that. So I don't have any classes that I really enjoyed so much like Henry, but just outside of the court, I really just enjoyed spending time with my teammates. And it was always refreshing to just be off the court with them and just enjoy life in that sense. So anything dealing with spring fling, I just had the time of my life. So.
You mean to say that you didn't make a mini Facebook, Michae? Gosh.
Yeah, don't make me sound bad. I told you it was gonna sound nerdy. I told you. I prefaced it that way.
No.
I'll hand it over to Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything like that either. But I would say probably my best moment off the court, off the field, would be probably freshman year. Honestly, just coming in and like automatically having 50 best friends who were just like there to greet you and just wanted to be your best friend right away. And that was a really cool thing, because I was obviously very worried coming into Penn, not really knowing that many people, kind of like I have to meet my friends, like introduce myself to everyone. But right away, I'm getting hugs and high fives from guys that I didn't know at the time, but were going to be my best friends for the next 3 years. So I was just really thankful to kind of come in and have that kind of weight lift off my chest of having to meet people and having to make some new friends. On the field, my sophomore year was really great. We had a really great year. We were one of the top ranked teams in the country. We beat Yale a couple of times during the year and won the Ivy League championship, which was amazing. I would say actually the best moment on the field, even though it did actually end up in a loss. It was in the Elite Eight, the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament, and we were playing Yale for a third time that year, and we had beaten them in 2 overtime games. We had beaten them twice that year, both in overtime games. And this game also went to overtime. It was just an amazing game. It was in Connecticut, so all my friends were there, all my family was there, and there was so many people, and it was a beautiful field, beautiful day. And we ended up losing 19-18 in overtime. It was heartbreaking, terrible feeling, horrible. And I just remember looking up, holding my teammates, hugging my teammates, and looking up at the crowd and seeing all the alumni chanting ILPL, which stands for I Love Penn Lacrosse, which is kind of one of our slogans that has really like just meant how much Penn Lacrosse means to each one of us, and kind of hearing them chant that and hearing them like still supporting us after such a devastating loss, and that heartbreak and just knowing that we had done something really special that a lot of people had really recognized, and being able to go through that pain and that misery together. That was a moment that at the time I never would say was my favorite moment, but looking back, I'm really grateful for it and really grateful to have dealt with that loss that way. And so, athletics has given me all those opportunities. I'm really thankful for it.
Right. No, I definitely think with all your kind of personal anecdotes, you're really ending this conversation off on a high note. I know a lot of this conversation kind of revolved around a lot of the struggles and difficulties that we face as student athletes, just in terms of the sacrifices we have to make. But at the end of the day, we have experiences that not a lot of people get to experience. So I'm really happy to hear you guys tell those stories. But I'll pass it over to Lucas. I want to thank you guys for answering with such thoroughness and detail. I learned a lot. I'm sure our viewers did, and I hope you guys were able to learn more about each other. But I think it's been like a great conclusion to this amazing week the Office of Social Equity and Community has put on, and hoping this can be a recurring event, because I think, the opportunity for student athletes to speak their truths and share their experiences is of the utmost importance. So thank you guys for being a part of it and for letting me be here. But I'll pass it over to Lucas to kind of take us out.
Thank you all. That was great. I hope everyone in the audience can see why this was a hand-picked selection of students. This wasn't, including Kayla, who did a great job moderating. This wasn't, something that you just kind of sign up for and we take applications. The planning committee, chose this group for a reason. And that's because they're great students, they're great athletes, and they have, a lot of great things to say to us. But on that note, I think they're also very, very representative of Penn athletics as a whole, and the Penn community as a whole. We have a lot of great young students here that, they want to share their experiences, they want to share their stories, they want to, touch on these social justice issues, and different things like that. So, really appreciate you all. I want to say thank you to all the panelists that took time out, especially the alumni who are willing to come back and share with us, throughout this week. Thanks to everyone who has been following throughout the week, especially these last 3 days. it's been great to see everyone's support, especially, for those of you who may not even be in the Penn community. It's awesome that this event was able to reach you all. So thank you for taking time out and coming. Thank you to the rest of the planning committee, Rena, Piper, Raven, who you all met earlier in this week. They all introduced the different panels. Thank you to Nicole Malloy, Jen Cabazzoli, and Rosemary Burnett, who were also part of the planning committee. A lot of other people, Penn Athletics, the Office of Social Equity, who promoted the event, supported everything we did, throughout these 8 weeks of planning. Thank you to everyone. And again, thank you to the audience. Continue to follow us tomorrow as we close the week out with some more social media stuff. You all know where to find that. And again, if you missed any of the last 3 days of panels, you can find them on the YouTube page that you're actually already on. So thank you to everyone. Again, thank you to the student athletes we have on here. That was a fantastic talk. And I think, last thing I want to say before I let everyone go, I think they did a great job of, telling the truth about what it's like to be a student athlete, but, not making it seem like this is like an obligation or like, trying to get some, sympathy from everyone, because, this is a decision that we made and we love being student athletes, even though it's not always easy, but I think they did a great job of kind of telling that narrative. So thank you all again. Everyone else, enjoy your night. Appreciate you coming out and supporting this event. This is the first of many annual Sport and Society weeks. So thanks for making the first one so great.